Yeah, we've finally done. That took forever. Let's go home quickly. Jackson and Mason, your dad has gone now. So I don't have to care for you two anymore, right?
Shortly after my son Matthew's funeral was conducted, his wife, Emily, said the unbelievable words. What was she thinking when she said such things? I wonder what she would say to her twin, Jackson and Mason, who is in the midst of grief over the loss of their father. The parent of these kids are only you now. Think about it carefully.
What? I'm going to remarry a handsome doctor. Let the old lady raise the twins. See you.
While I was confused, Emily spat out selfish lines and left gracefully. The attendees and I were taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Fine then. After Emily left, I muttered quietly, I'll take care of Jackson and Mason. After finishing the tumultuous funeral and returning home, I finally crawled into bed and let out a deep sigh. I've never felt a day drag on this long. I'm exhausted beyond belief. My eyes naturally close.
Ha ha ha. Giggle giggle.
At 2 a.m., eerie laughter emanates from the next room, waking me up. Opening the door, in the darkness, two faces illuminated by the pale glow of the screen. There were Jackson and Mason, supposed to be grieving, laughing heartily at the computer screen. I'm Mia. I've been living alone in this house since my beloved husband passed away 3 years ago. My only joy is when my adorable grandsons come to visit. Today, I'm restless and can't seem to calm down since it's the day Jackson and Mason, my grandsons, are coming over to play after a long time. Even though I finished preparing lunch, I felt like something was missing and ended up wandering around the room. That's right, the camera. My grandchildren, who just started elementary school, said they would show me their school uniforms. To capture their special moment, I started rummaging around for the camera. Found it. Now everything's ready. Just as I finally breathed a sigh of relief, I heard the sound of a car engine stopping in front of the house.
Grandma, hello. Hello.
Cheerful voices came from the direction of the entrance. Hello, you two. You came just in time. As I replied, I hurried to the entrance, where Jackson and Mason stood with shiny backpacks and crisp uniforms. Following them were my son Matthew and his wife Emily.
Mom, we're home.
Hello, Mia. Long time no see.
Welcome, come on in. I welcomed my son's family and had a photo shoot. My grandchildren, carrying bags slightly bigger than their bodies, looked adorable. I couldn't tell if they were carrying the bags or if the bags were carrying them.
Grandma, guess what? I was in a different class from Mason. I had a male teacher, and Jackson had a female teacher.
Yes, my grandsons are twins. My only son Matthew married Emily 8 years ago, and to our surprise, they were blessed with twins not long after. I suddenly had 2 grandchildren. I remember feeling so happy. However, I was surprised when my son came to me to report that he was marrying Emily. Originally, because Matthew had a calm and serious personality, and he had spent his student days quietly, I never imagined he would choose a beautiful and sharp woman like a model. Thanks to that, the twins who were born also have distinct and well-defined features. They might be what you call good-looking. Emily was eager to make the most of their good looks, so she was desperate to get Jackson and Mason into the entertainment industry by sending them to dance school and having them audition. When they first started kindergarten, it seems Jackson and Mason didn't understand what was going on and just went along with it, attending dances and auditions. Recently, I've been wondering how they've been doing while preparing meals in the kitchen with Matthew. When Emily went to the car to fetch something she forgot, Matthew quietly started talking.
Mom, actually.
It seems to be about Jackson and Mason.
When they first started elementary school, they really didn't want to dance anymore, and they hated being on TV. They rebelled against it a lot, and for a while, their relationship with Emily wasn't great.
They seemed to become more assertive and expressed their feelings to Matthew and Emily. Jackson and Mason, much like Matthew, were not comfortable with being in the spotlight.
Emily was desperate to keep them going, but they ended up quitting everything for Jackson and Mason's sake. It could have led to a tense atmosphere between us, but things are fine now.
Just as I was concerned about their recent behavior but hadn't had the chance to ask, Matthew quietly confided in me, away from Emily and the two boys. They seem to be working hard to adjust to school life now. As we gathered around the table, listening to Jackson and Mason talk about their school experiences, I felt relieved to see that they were enjoying themselves. Though I had worried about their reserved personalities, it was reassuring to see them happy. After a hearty meal and a lively conversation, as Jackson and Mason left with smiles on their faces, I felt a sense of happiness wash over me. And a few months later, Mason's family of 4 came to visit again. What new things have Jackson and Mason learned recently?
I managed to animate a drawing I made on the computer the other day. I'm in the middle of learning C programming language.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what you guys answered, but you two are able to do some amazing things. Lately, 2 boys have been obsessed with using computers rather than playing sports. I'm not at all knowledgeable about computer stuff. But from what I've heard from Matthew, it's clear that Jackson and Mason are much more skilled with computers than kids their age. Both Matthew and I believe in their computer talents and have high hopes for their future. Matthew is even looking into nearby programming classes.
Instead of boring old computers, they could become famous and make money by appearing on TV.
Emily didn't seem too thrilled about the boys being interested in computers. Perhaps she hadn't completely given up on the idea of getting them into showbiz.
It's fine, isn't it? Let the kids do what they love.
Matthew said, trying to reassure Emily. In my heart, I nodded, thinking that the greatest happiness is letting grandchildren do what they love and grow freely. As time passed, Jackson and Mason entered 6th grade. They were still engrossed in their beloved computers and seemed to have completed all their programming class studies from a few years back. Lately, Matthew has been traveling a lot for work, so he's often away from home. Because of this, Jackson and Mason often come over to my house, since Emily's work keeps her busy, and she ends up having to leave the kids alone.
Dad's never home, so it's boring not being able to go out. We made plans to go camping next weekend, but I wonder if he'll really come.
Dad's just really busy with work, right? Since he's missing out on playing with you too, we gotta cheer him on for trying his best. Due to Matthew's busy schedule, there hasn't been much time to spend together, and Jackson and Mason seem a bit dissatisfied. Earlier, Matthew was excitedly talking about being interested with a make-or-break project for the company. Now that the project is finally underway, he's working hard with his colleagues. Even during the day, I've started taking care of Jackson and Mason overnight. At first, I accepted, thinking it would give Emily a little break since she's mostly juggling work and childcare on her own. However, with each of Matthew's business trips, Emily has started staying out overnight. I was more than happy to spend time with my grandsons, but it seemed like she was staying out too often. They are in 6th grade, so I don't think they need that much care, but I wonder if she is having a hard time with them.
Mia, please take care of the kids again today.
With a swift exit, Emily was gone. Today, Jackson and Mason are staying over again.
Oh no, I forgot the cold medicine.
Looks like you've caught a cold. That's not good, since she just left. Should I call Emily and ask her to bring it? I called Emily's number. It rang several times without an answer. Finally, the announcement came. The number you have dialed is either switched off or out of range. Emily wasn't picking up. Your mom didn't answer the phone. What should we do about the medicine? Hopefully, it doesn't get worse.
Oh, I know Mom usually turns off her phone for important stuff.
Jackson's words made me ask back without thinking. What? So, you mean you can never reach her during important matters?
Yeah, no matter when I call, she never picks up. I'm not that sick, so I'll be fine, Grandma.
Both of them seemed calm compared to my anxiety. But what if there's an emergency regarding the kids, even during an important matter? So far, nothing serious has happened, and these kids are safe, but could this be considered child neglect? Feeling sorry for Jackson and Mason, who don't seem to get any attention from their mother, I spent the day feeling a bit frustrated. The next night, when Emily came to pick them up, I asked her, "Emily, Mason forgot his medicine, so I called a little after you left. Did you find it hard to pick up the phone?"
Oh, sorry about that. I turned off my phone. Didn't the kids tell you?
Emily replied without a hint of apology, as if it were perfectly normal. "Oh, I see, but you might want to keep it on just in case something comes up and we need to reach you." I was taken aback by Emily's attitude and couldn't say anything more. After that, Jackson and Mason stayed over several times. While I was looking after them, I called Emily's cell phone several times for various reasons, but as usual, she didn't answer. Then one afternoon, I received a call on my cell phone from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the number. With trepidation, I answered the phone, and I heard the voice of a panicked man on the other end.
Hello, is this Matthew's mother? I'm Matthew's colleague. I'm sorry to bother you suddenly. Please calm down and listen. Matthew is currently in the hospital.
It took me a moment to comprehend the words coming from the phone. Suddenly, anxiety flooded over me. I asked his colleague for the location of the hospital and hurriedly called a taxi. Even on the way there, I couldn't calm down because I didn't know Matthew's condition. What happened to make him end up in the hospital? Is he okay? Wait, does Emily know anything about this? I decided to call Emily for now. Despite my desire for her to pick up, I was greeted by a long dial tone. Then the announcement came, "The number you have called." Even in times like these, not being able to get in touch with Emily, what on earth is she doing? While praying for her to pick up the phone, I kept calling over and over again, but the result was always the same. I kept trying to reach her while on the way to the hospital, but she never answered. When I arrived at the hospital, a tearful colleague greeted me and informed me of the situation. It seemed that Matthew had suddenly collapsed at work and had been rushed to the hospital. Despite receiving necessary treatment, his condition was critical, and he still hadn't regained consciousness.
I tried calling his wife several times, but she never picked up. So I contacted you instead. Thank you for coming so quickly.
Emily didn't answer the phone after all. It turns out that Matthew had been suffering from insomnia recently and had looked unwell, causing concern among his colleagues. Was it because he was so busy with work that he couldn't sleep well, or did he push himself too hard? I regretted Matthew's earnest nature. For now, I felt I had to let Emily know the situation, so I decided to head to Matthew's house. I left the hospital with a heavy heart, worried about Matthew's condition. When I arrived at Matthew's house, Jackson and Mason, who had just returned from school, were home alone.
Grandma, what's wrong?
"You're back. Has Mom not come back yet?"
Not yet. Are you waiting for her at home?
I debated whether I should tell Jackson and Mason about Matthew. Is it okay for me to tell them? I decided to wait until Emily got back and explain it to all three of them together. After a while, Emily returned. "Emily, did you check your phone? I called you so many times." Emily rummaged through her bag and pulled out her phone.
Mia, what's going on? Oh, I have a missed call. Is everything okay?
Despite feeling irritated by Emily's attitude, I took a deep breath and told her. "Emily, Jackson, and Mason, listen carefully. Matthew collapsed at work today and is now in the hospital. The doctors did various treatments, but he still hasn't regained consciousness." Jackson and Mason remained frozen in surprise, their faces showing shock from the sudden news. On the other hand, Emily, without changing her expression, just exclaimed and continued fiddling with her smartphone. I expected her to be more surprised and worried, but her reaction, or lack thereof, caught me off guard. My bewilderment didn't seem to register with Emily, who was engrossed in her phone. And so, the days passed one by one. Despite our wishes for him to wake up, Matthew remained unconscious. The doctors informed us that there was little hope of him regaining consciousness, and we had to prepare ourselves for the worst. Several days later, Matthew's funeral took place. Jackson and Mason stood silently, their heads bowed, tears streaming down their faces. Despite being mature for their age, they were still just sixth graders. Losing their beloved father, they were undoubtedly at the depths of sorrow. All I could do for them was to offer my support, gently patting their backs as they mourned. Emily, without paying any mind to the children, sat there looking very sluggish, greeting curtly to the attendees. The funeral was attended by many of Matthew's colleagues and superiors from work. Each one mourned Matthew's departure, with most of them wearing expressions of frustration or shedding tears. Seeing how important my son was to the company fills my heart. But it's strange. After the funeral, I overheard some of Matthew's coworkers talking on their way home, and something about their conversation bothered me.
Just when the project was finally getting on track and settling down, why did he have to pass away so suddenly?
Even though he hadn't been working overtime lately, his face looked unusually worn out. He mentioned not being able to sleep. I wonder what was weighing on his mind.
These words stuck with me and have been circulating in my head. I thought Matthew's condition was due to his busy work schedule. But none of his coworkers mentioned anything like that. On the contrary, it seems like work had been calm lately, and they were concerned about Matthew's recent behavior. If it wasn't work-related stress that led to his insomnia, then what else could it be? With those doubts in mind, we reached the end of the funeral.
Yeah, we've finally done. That took forever. Let's go home quickly. Jackson and Mason, your dad has gone now. So I don't have to care for you two anymore, right?
After the funeral, Emily said mockingly, "I don't think those are words to say to your own children with that kind of expression." What was she thinking when she said that? It's hard to understand why she would say such things to Jackson and Mason, who are in the midst of grieving for their father. I thought it was a mistake and asked again, "Emily, what do you mean all of a sudden?"
With these kids around, they're just a nuisance to me. I don't need them.
The parent of these kids are only you now. Think about it carefully. I thought Emily was just confused and tried to reason with her.
Think about it. There's nothing to think about. This is so convenient. Now I can live with my boyfriend.
Boyfriend? Who's your boyfriend, Emily?
I'm marrying a handsome doctor. Let the old hag take care of the twin brats. See ya.
While I was still bewildered, Emily uttered those selfish words and left in a swift manner. The attendees and I were taken aback by the sudden turn of events. Fine. After Emily left, I muttered under my breath, "I'll take responsibility for Jackson and Mason." It's better for them to grow up in an environment where they won't be abandoned by their mother and suffer sadness. Moreover, I'm lucky to be able to live with such adorable grandchildren. When I made up my mind like that in my heart, Jackson spoke up.
Grandma, can we live with you?
Of course, that's fine. Jackson smiled relievedly.
It's better to live with Grandma than with Mom. She's never at home anyway. I don't think she cares about us.
Mason's words pained my heart. Was Emily really so indifferent to the two kids to make them say such things? After stopping by Matthew's house, I packed Jackson and Mason's belongings, and we finally returned home. After finishing dinner, both Jackson and Mason seemed tired, with little conversation and sleepy looks. Today must have been exhausting both physically and mentally. After bidding farewell to their father, their mother left them behind as well. I wonder if Jackson and Mason are okay emotionally. They seem calm, as if they've accepted this sudden turn of events, but I can't help but worry about what's going on in their minds. Instead of nagging, I'll just have to keep an eye on them for a while. Both of you must be tired today. Get some rest tonight, you two. Once the cleanup was done, I also wanted to rest as soon as possible. While doing chores, Jackson and Mason were no longer in the living room. They must have finished bathing and returned to their room. Finally, I slipped into bed and let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, I found myself recalling today's events like a movie reel flashing before my eyes. Is Emily really serious about letting go of the kids? Despite the late hour, I felt the need to confirm my feelings, so I called Emily again.
The number you have dialed.
I was hoping she'd pick up, but instead, I heard the familiar automated message. Today felt longer than any other day, and I was terribly exhausted. My eyes began to close on their own.
Ha ha ha. Giggle giggle.
At 2 a.m., I was awakened by laughter coming from the next room. Was I hearing things, I wondered, but the laughter persisted. Jackson and Mason were supposed to be asleep in the next room. Thinking they should be asleep, I gently approached their room to check. As I opened the door, I saw two faces illuminated by the blue glow of a computer screen in the darkness. Jackson and Mason, whom I thought were asleep, were actually giggling while looking at the computer. What's going on here in the middle of the night?
Oh, Grandma, did we wake you up? Sorry. Yay, Grandma, take a look at this.
As instructed, I peered at the computer screen. Emily, darling, whose chat history is this, anyway?
It's Mom and her boyfriend's chat history.
Displayed on the computer screen was the chat history between Emily and presumably her boyfriend.
I bet notifications are coming to your phone right about now.
Upon hearing that, I went to fetch my cell phone and checked it. Sure enough, there were notifications. When I opened them, I saw the same chat history from the chatting app on the computer screen. How did this happen? Did you guys do this? They answered with innocent looks on their faces.
Yeah, we did it. By now, everyone in Mom's phone contacts list should have received the images.
What's going on? I couldn't make sense of it, so I asked the two what was going on.
I think Mom's the reason Dad collapsed.
It seemed that Matthew had some doubts about Emily lately, as she had been spending a lot of time away from home. Matthew was pressing Emily about where she had been and what she had been doing, but she was avoiding the questions entirely. Jackson overheard.
We're still kids, you know. Dad must have been worrying about something, but he never said anything to us.
Matthew seemed troubled by Emily's frequent absences, and the fact that she kept leaving the kids with me each time.
Sometimes when I slept with Dad, I heard him groaning in pain, and I'd wake up. Maybe he couldn't sleep because of that.
It seemed he had noticed his father's stress and lack of sleep, whether it was just a child's intuition or not.
But you know, the relatives and uncles all said it was because Dad was busy with work, even though it's definitely Mom's fault.
Jackson said, sounding frustrated.
I couldn't say it was Mom's fault at the funeral because no one would believe a kid like me. So, I programmed Mom's phone after the funeral to show everyone the evidence.
No matter how much they appealed to the fact that Dad had collapsed, the adults wouldn't believe them. Moreover, they seemed to think that if they tried to speak the truth, Emily would stop them. It was surprising that they would expose things like this, even though they were good with computers. The way the two of them spoke so freely made me curious. However, even though she wasn't home much, I wondered how they managed to manipulate Emily's phone.
Mom's not good at using smartphones or computers, so we set it up for her. We remembered all the passwords and stuff. We also checked her messages while we were at it, so we knew who Mom was always talking to. Whenever Mom's with that guy, she really turns off her phone. So, we made sure information was sent when the phone was turned off. So, if images are being sent now, it means her phone's off. Look, there's a lot of evidence we prepared being sent.
I checked the notifications on my own phone.
Those brats are going to Grandma's, so today and tomorrow I'm with Darling. Darling is handsome and talented, but Matthew's been working so hard and still doesn't get paid much. It's not even worth comparing. I might as well scheme about my husband's affair and get a hefty settlement if we divorce.
The stories were unbelievable. As I opened the notifications, there were also messages about Jackson and Mason.
I thought I'd earn big since I gave birth to such handsome boys, but neither of them has any intention of entering showbiz. They lack the drive. It's seriously unbelievable. I spent a lot of money sending them to dance classes and auditions, but it was all a waste. They're such ungrateful children.
What a terrible mother she is. She forced her ego on her children, and now she calls them ungrateful children. I truly feel sorry for those kids. And while I always knew Emily was a straightforward and clear-headed woman, I never thought she'd be so foul-mouthed and rude. I thought maybe she became rude due to heightened emotions at the funeral, but is this her true nature? Did Matthew know she was like this, or was he deceived? Learning about Emily's true nature was shocking. Despite my shock, Jackson and Mason seemed oddly relieved.
By now, our relatives and Mom's friends must be shocked.
A few days later, I received a call from Emily's mom.
I'm really sorry for what my daughter did. I don't even know how to apologize,
she said, sounding genuinely remorseful as she apologized repeatedly. While I couldn't undo what had happened, I accepted her apology and inquired about Emily's whereabouts. According to Emily's mom, after the revelations on that day, Emily had been cut off by both relatives and friends. Hence, nobody knew where she was or what she was doing. It made sense, after all. To be honest, there were days when I worried if it was the right decision to suddenly take in Jackson and Mason. But I felt relieved that we severed ties with Emily before she could disrupt their lives any further. I believe they can live happily without being involved with Emily. And rumor has it that the cheating boyfriend she was going to remarry left her because of her bad nature. However, that wasn't all. Because evidence of the affair had spread even to her friends, one of them apparently took it upon themselves to identify her partner. Surprisingly, it turned out that the guy also had a bad reputation for womanizing and was seeing multiple partners. Emily happened to be one of them. Furthermore, it was revealed that he wasn't actually a doctor but just a regular employee at a small company. Other misdeeds of his had also come to light, and it seemed he was in quite a predicament. Some time later, I received a call from Matthew's company. They informed me that Matthew's death was being treated as a work-related accident, and therefore, compensation would be provided. I knew that Matthew's death wasn't the company's fault. Thus, I felt uneasy about both the accident being recognized as work-related and receiving compensation. Feeling that I couldn't simply accept the compensation in silence, I headed to Matthew's supervisor. "Thank you for coming to Matthew's funeral the other day. The truth is, his collapse wasn't due to work-related stress, but rather because of the stress from his wife." I explained the situation. After hearing me out, the supervisor looked surprised. However, he quickly returned to a serious expression.
"No, regardless of the reason, we would like you to accept the compensation. We see it as our final evaluation of Matthew."
The supervisor said so. It turns out Matthew had been on the verge of completing a project, and thanks to his efforts, the project was a huge success. Matthew's contribution was significant, and it wouldn't have been possible without him. This project became a significant turning point for the company's substantial growth, so they are very grateful to Matthew for it, but it seemed they couldn't express those feelings fully and regretted it. I was delighted that they valued Matthew so highly. Matthew's life, where he worked hard earnestly, wasn't in vain. If I could, I would want to directly convey to Matthew that the project was successful because of him, and that the company had expanded thanks to him. But that won't happen. While hoping that Matthew in heaven will receive some form of compensation, I decided to accept the compensation. The amount was more than enough for Jackson and Mason's future education. As Matthew wished when he was alive, I want both of them to grow up freely and pursue what they love. Eventually, they'll each have dreams. I don't want them to give up on their dreams just because they're living with me without their parents. I thought I'd keep this money carefully so that I can provide them with various choices when the time comes. With a heartfelt wish for them to become people who can contribute to society like Matthew, I resolved once again to raise 2 boys. From now on, the 3 of us will live happily while remembering Matthew.